Because of what God has done through Junction, I have fellowship.
I have identity,
accountability,
abundant growth,
Purpose.
I am challenged,
love,
encouraged,
Empowered.
Where two or more join together, a junction is formed. That is what happens on Thursday nights when young single adults from across the Brazos Valley join together to worship God, study His Word, and learn how God can use them to impact their world. This isn't a new idea. God has always used His people from all different backgrounds to impact the world around them while transforming their very lives through His grace. God continues His work through Junction, where men and women are finding victory and freedom from long-standing struggles and realizing their identity and significance in the unshakable life given to us in Jesus Christ. Are we perfect? No. We come from a variety of backgrounds and carry a variety of struggles. At times, we all get distracted and stumble. But when those times arrive, it is vital to have a community of men and women reminding us of God's grace and encouraging us to live in pursuit of greater things. You are invited to be part of this community where you are welcomed, wanted, and known.
I am welcomed, wanted, and known.
Welcomed, wanted, and known.
Welcome, wanted, and known.
I am welcomed, wanted,
And known.
Welcomed.
Wanted, and known.
I am welcomed, wanted, and known.
If you are brand new to Junction, my name is Todd Berkey. If you are not brand new to Junction, my name still is Todd Berkey. And we get together every Thursday night, almost every Thursday night throughout the course of the year. We get together to gather as a bunch of individuals who are just trying to figure out, what does it look like? What does it look like to walk well with Jesus during this stage of life? Because that's really the goal and the desire of life, is to walk well with Jesus. And so that's what we're doing here. And no matter where you are on that spectrum of faith, whether you're like, I don't know about this Jesus guy, or you're all the way at the other end, like I am all in. No matter where you are, we're glad that you're here. And we just want to dive into God's Word. We want to just live and work in community so that, again, together we can walk well after Jesus. We've been in this series called Implications. And if you're like, what is that? It's basically, as we take the gospel and overlay it on our lives, there are implications. If the gospel is true, it's going to impact our lives in different ways. And so kind of what we've covered so far is this. We've talked about week one. We even talked about what is the gospel. We broke it down into simplest terms as we possibly can, that you and I, we were created with a high purpose, and that is to image God. We were to be in a dependent relationship with God. But our ancestors, they said, no, we want to image ourselves. We want to make our names known. That's called sin. We are designed with a purpose. It is to image God. It's to be in a dependent relationship with Him. And when we don't, that brokenness, man, we see it. We see it in our world. We see it in ourselves. And there's nothing that you or I can do to fix that. No amount of energy, no amount of money, no amount of good works, no amount of church attendance, nothing can fix your brokenness except for Jesus Christ, who is God's one and only Son, who was sent on a mission to come down and die on a cross. Because that's what my brokenness deserves, and that's what your brokenness deserves. But He didn't stay dead. God rose Him 3 days later. He's a living God, a living hope. And He sits at the right hand of the Father. And there we know that He is proving by His resurrection that He is the way, the truth, and the life, that no one can come to the Father but through Him. And so the gospel message is that, and we just believe, Jesus, you are what fixes my brokenness. And we simply say, thank you. Being a Christian isn't it's complex, but it's not this overwhelming equation that nobody can figure out. It's believing, and then as you walk throughout life, you just, God, what would you have me do in the middle of this? As we get to know who He is, it helps us understand better how to image Him. And so we also then talked about the week 2, we talked about sin and just the magnitude, the impact of sin, how just distorted everything is because of it. And it was really kind of a bleak picture, but as bleak as it was, it's so cool because Christ's work on the cross redeemed all of it. It's going to fix all of it. And so that just increases my view of who He is, and it just blows my mind away. And then we looked at, okay, the gospel, if we take the gospel and overlay it on how we see ourselves. As a new creation in Christ, old things are gone, new things have come. And we talked about that. And it's really a beautiful, amazing amazing truth that you are a new creation in Christ and that everything has changed. And then we looked 2 weeks ago at when you overlay the gospel in the view of others. It was just a really harder message, a heavy message, because we started just talking about the reality. If the gospel's true, it says that it's appointed for every person to die once, and after that comes judgment. And either the judgment fell on the cross or it falls on us. And that's what Jesus offers as a way of escape. And so it's weird. I don't know why God does this, but God has left that message, the gospel message, in your hands and my hands. We looked in the book of Acts, and an angel showed up, but that angel didn't declare the gospel. The angel just orchestrated and encouraged so that Peter could come and declare this gospel message to others. And so we really just kind of sat in that for a little bit about what is the gospel message? What does it look like to have a gospel conversation? Man, it's really important that we're actively engaged. And when we say yes to that invitation to be a part of that, really our lives begin to change in awesome ways. And then last week, Kevin came in, he took a good look at the heart. And tonight we're going to look at the gospel and stuff. Things. And I don't know about you. I just feel like I got an over extra and above amount of selfishness when it comes to stuff and things. Like I'm not a good sharer. Naturally, I'm not. God has had to do an incredible work in me. I'm just so much so that when I got out of college, I made sure to buy a 2-seater because I didn't want to have to be the guy that carpooled everybody all over the place. It was a fun car to drive, but I'm like, if I have other people in my car and I have to take them all the time, then they're going to make my car dirty. I mean, just selfishness in my stuff was all about me. And God has had to really do an incredible work in me to change my view and to release some of these selfish tendencies that I have when the gospel is applied to my view of stuff and things. And so tonight, that's what we're going to look at. I'm just going to warn you. I don't like this message. I don't like it because it hits me several times like, ooh, ah, ee, I just don't. There's a lot of things we're going to look at that's going to make me feel uncomfortable. And if you feel uncomfortable at the same time, just know I'm not aiming at you specifically. It's really, this is me talking to me a lot of the time. I'm just inviting you in. But this is just a wonderful area where we get to see who God is and how he can change how we view stuff. So here's our plan for the night. We're just going to look at what do we mean by stuff. We'll fly through that. And then we're going to look at what does the natural lens look like. And then what does the gospel lens look like when we look at stuff. So let's just dive in here with stuff. And we're going to be in Acts just briefly. And then we're going to be in Luke. But Acts 2:44 says this. The church has just started. Let me put this in context. The book of Acts, the church has just happened. Like the Holy Spirit shows up. People are speaking in tongues. The gospel message is going out. There's all these men and women going like, oh my goodness, we're the reason that Jesus died. Yes, you are. What do we need to do to be saved? Believe in Jesus Christ and be baptized. All of you, come on. And just boom, instantly there's thousands of people coming and they're part of this church thing. And they're like, well, what do? Well, we come together. We pray together. We serve one another. It's just an exciting time. And it's interesting, we're looking right here at this verse. This is what the early church was doing. And all those who believed were together and had all things in common. And they began selling their property and possessions and were sharing them with all as anyone might have need. And so we're going to get our definition of stuff right from here. And it basically, when you look at property in the Greek, it talks about just property. The field, the land that you own, but also houses. And not just the houses, then the furniture inside the houses. So this term isn't just your house, just your dwelling place, just your apartment. It's also the big movable stuff that's in it as well. And so when we start looking at this and going like, oh, okay, I think stuff means more than just the big stuff. And if you're not sure, when you start looking at the word possessions here, it's anything owned or possessed. It's used for all that a person owns. And actually its root word comes from this idea of sustenance. It's maintaining the minimum level, the bare essentials. It goes all the way down to the very, like, I need bread and water to live. That's covered in stuff. And so when we get to this, what do we mean when we say stuff? How does the gospel impact our view of stuff? We're talking about money. And before I go on any further there, it's like one of the number one things why specifically men are like, I'm not going to church. All they do is talk about money. They just want my money. They just want my money, my money, my money. Listen, I'm not here asking for your money. I'm not here. I just want you to have a good understanding of the gospel does impact your view of money. It will. Money, housing, transportation, meaning your car, your moped, your bike, your shoes. Technology, that's your phones, your iPads, your Android devices, your computers, your gaming systems, your furniture, clothing, your food. Stuff is stuff. It's everything you own. And the gospel has something to say about that. So we're looking at, when we mean stuff, hopefully it's clear. It's everything that you own. But now let's look at this here. I want us to be in our main text, we're going to be in Luke chapter 18. And let me turn there. I'm going to read it to us. I don't have it on the screen. Woo! Music stand is moving. And in Luke 18, we're going to read about this guy who's a rich young ruler. He's a wealthy guy. We're not going to spend a ton of time here, but we are going to spend a ton of time here. Because I think we get a really good glimpse into what is just, if left alone, if the gospel does not change us, if left alone, how do we view stuff? So let's read here. In Luke chapter 18, verses 18 and following here. A rich ruler questioned him, that being Jesus, and said, "Good teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus said to him, "Well, why do you call me good? No one is good except God alone. You know the commandments. Do not commit adultery, do not murder, do not steal, do not bear false witness, honor your father and mother." Jesus starts laying out the commandments, the 10 commandments. It's interesting, though, the ones that he pulls out are all the things that are this direction, good-naturedness. He doesn't mention anything that is this direction, about having no other gods other than himself. He doesn't use those. He just points out, like, hey, just be a good person, right? Isn't that what it is? Isn't that what the law is? It's just these vertical relationships, right? And he just chooses those. And the young man says this. He says, "All these things I have kept from my youth." Man, humble guy. When Jesus heard this, he said to him, "Hey, one thing you still lack. Sell all that you possess and give it to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. And come follow me." But when he had heard these things, he became very sad, very distraught, for he was extremely rich. And the man turns away and walks away. I just want to look at a few observations here. Some of these things you're going to be like, yeah, duh, so good. That's what observations a lot of times are. Did you notice that he's rich? It says that he's wealthy. It also said there in verse 18 that he's a ruler, so he's got power, he's got position. So you have a wealthy guy who has power and position. This same event is recorded both in Matthew and Mark as well. And in Mark, we also learn the fact that he's younger guy. And so he's young, powerful, and wealthy. Man. But we also learn, especially when we look in Mark's account of this guy shows up by running towards Jesus, falling down, kneeling, and asking a question. All of those things are very vulnerable and not normal for somebody who is in such a high position, with such power and with such wealth. He's desperate. It's a picture of a desperate man coming to Jesus. And it's interesting. He's got the position. He's got power. He's got money. He even has, like, youthfulness. And yet something's missing. He knows these things do not complete. So he comes running to Jesus, right? And Jesus' response is really pretty interesting. There's more going on, but he invites him. And he does. He invites him to release the ownership of the stuff. He says, hey, all that stuff that you have, just go sell it. Go sell it and give it to the poor. But he doesn't just say, just go get rid of it. He says, I want to give an exchange. Take all that wealth, get rid of it, use it for the poor, and listen, in its place, what I'm going to give you, I'm going to offer two things. I'm going to offer you a treasure in heaven. Something that's eternal, that can't ever be taken away. I mean, you're young now, but eventually you're going to be old, and eventually you're not going to be on this side of eternity, and sometime you're going to step on the other side. And what I'm offering you that goes on for all of eternity is so much better than what you have right now. And so I'm offering that to you. And more than that, right here and right now, I'm inviting you. Come on. Come close to me. Follow me. Get to know me. I want to increase your relationship with me. It's a huge invitation that's given. Well, the next thing's, you know where it's going. He full on rejects the offer. He says, man, you're crazy. You're crazy. No. And then he returns back into his wealth and his power, his position, his life, like it was before. What a sad, sad story. You know, and it's interesting, we see here that he says no to Jesus because he refuses to release ownership of his stuff. And you see it because Jesus gives a thing, he hears it, he becomes sad. Why? Well, because he was extremely rich. You want me to get rid of my wealth for that. All of it for that. And so he says no to Jesus because he refuses to release his ownership over his stuff. Man, really think about it, that's sad. Another way of looking at it is he knowingly holds on to a comfortable death instead of taking hold of life. I mean, that's what's going on here. Jesus says, I've got eternal life. I've got great things for you. I've got intimacy with me, which is that's what you're designed for. We talked about that with the gospel. Back in Genesis chapter 1, 26 and 27, you're designed to be in this relationship with him. And he says, come on. I want to restore you to your original purpose. I want to give you greater meaning and greater hope. You know this other stuff does not work. Come on. And he says, no. I'm going to hang on to my stuff that I know does not work. And I know it's leading me towards just nothing but death. Instead of taking hold of life. You know, that's sad. But think about us. I mean, the reality is if you're human, you've probably chased after something other than Jesus, thinking that it'll complete you. Maybe you thought it was a certain job, a certain title, a certain grade, a certain just even degree. Maybe you thought it was a certain relationship. Maybe you thought it was a vehicle, a car. Maybe you thought it was a certain weight, a certain look. I mean, there's something we've tried because we're human and we know we're broken, and so we try to fix that. And then we go and we step into it, and we step into it and say, hey, if I just get this job, then life will be complete. And we step in, we're like, wow, this is really good. Yeah, I left that old job, which was yucky, and now I'm feeling really good and excited. This job is everything. It's sweet. And then 3 weeks later, we're like, this job is horrible. It doesn't fix me. It doesn't complete me. And then you jump into the next job. You're like, this is it. I've got it. And then 3 weeks later, like, this is horrible, it's miserable, everybody here is just rude and mean, and so you hop out of that one and you come to yet another job, like, this is it. And you keep throwing yourself into these different areas, hoping that your brokenness will be fixed through these different avenues. Or you start in a relationship. This is it. She is it. Like, oh, she's so great. You know the routine. Like, you get in, you're like, oh, this is so, oh, you're cute, beautiful. Oh, you're beautiful. Oh, this is so great. I love her. She's so great. I swear our children are going to be beautiful. And you're like, it's been like 2 days. And you're kind of creeping me out, Todd. And you're like, no, it's going to be it. And then all of a sudden something happens. You're like, golly, you know, there's still this brokenness inside of me. She's just not doing it for me. Peace out. And then you're like, oh, there it is. And you step into the next relationship. Yes, oh, she's it. She completes me. It's awesome and amazing. A few weeks go by. You're like, golly, she's kind of annoying me. It's not fixing me. And so you break up and you go into the next relationship hoping to find life there. And you go into the next relationship hoping to find life there. And you go into the next relationship hoping to find life there. And you bounce around and around and around and around and around and around and around. And the entire time, Jesus Christ is saying, hey, come here. I am the way, I am the truth, I'm the life. Come on. I've come to give you abundant life. Let that stuff go. Come to me. And what do? We look at him, much like this rich young ruler, and say, no. I mean, you say that, and I've only done 19 times of this circuit of depression, going around and around and around, hoping to find life in this, but I'm sure I'm going to find her eventually. I'm sure I'm going to find the job. I'm sure I'm going to get the grade. I'm sure that this next degree will really do it for me. I'm sure this high score in the video game will get it done. I'm sure when I binge watch this episode, these episodes, these seasons, once I get that done, then I'll really, really have life. And we go around and around and around and around these things that do not offer life. We're really no different than this guy. And how sad. Really, how sad. Because we know deep down it doesn't work, and yet we still run to it. And that's exactly what this guy did. You know, the natural lens when it comes to looking at stuff that might fix us and just stuff in general is this. It's just, I am the owner of my stuff. I own it. I worked hard for it. It's mine. And I can do whatever I want with my stuff. That's the natural view. I can buy whatever car I want. I'm getting a two-seater so that I'm never inconvenienced by bringing along other people who are going to be messy. I can do whatever I want to do. And it's interesting. That's all fine and dandy until it starts coming on to like, then how do you use your stuff, right? So if it's all yours, how do you use it? Who decides how you use it? Well, the owner. And so every time that it comes to using stuff, our eyes always go to the owner. In this case, I own everything. Todd Berkey owns everything. And so the best thing the way that this should be used, my car should be used, my stuff should be used, it's whatever I deem is right. It's all about me. Do you see that? When I'm the owner? If you don't, he's kind of this, it'd be like this. He's like, okay, you want me to use my money? I mean, I can use however I want, and you want me to get rid of it to help the poor? Why would I do that? What benefit does that really give me? Then I'm poor. Then I'm just like them. No, it's mine. No. The owner, me, I don't like that idea. It's uncomfortable to me, so no, I say no. And then I follow the owner's lead, which again, in my case, is me. All eyes are on the owner. Does that sound a lot like Genesis chapter 3 and the temptation that Satan came in and said, hey, listen, you don't need God. He knows if you eat of this fruit, you'll be independent of him. You can figure things out on your own. You have no need for him. He can't tell you what's right and what's wrong. How dare he even try to figure out how you should spend your day or how you should spend your money? This is all about you. The natural lens of our stuff is, I am the owner. It is my stuff. Now, a question for you, though. Is it possible? Is it just possible in the grand scheme of things that God perhaps allowed this man to be wealthy, to be the provision of life, both for himself, but also the poor people in the area? Is it just possible that God maybe had a plan behind all this? Is it possible that it would look like this, that God lavished riches on this man to both provide and give life to him, but he didn't want to stop there. He wanted him to use that wealth to also bless a whole bunch of other people? Is it just possible that God was wanting to use things in a different way than how the man wanted it? Is it just possible? And when you begin to think about that, you see with his idea of ownership that it's mine, you see him begin to focus on the provision, not the provider, but the provision, the actual money. When we think about this, when the provision is worshiped instead of the provider, think about this. When we begin to worship the provision, whether that's money, whether that's a relationship, whether that is a job, whether it is a car, whether it is clothing, whatever the stuff is that has been provided to you, when we begin to worship that, saying that's the highest thing in life for my identity, value, and worth, we're worshiping the provision and not the provider. When that happens, the provision that was meant for life actually becomes a source of death. Now, there's a lot going on there, at least for my simple brain. When we exchange and say, I will worship what has been given and what is meant to give me life, it actually becomes the source of death and misery for me. And what that looks like is God's provision. As it came out here, was really, obviously, Jesus is saying, hey, let loose of this and let's feed some people. Let's care for some people. And what he's hoping is that the man will have his eyes on the provider who is standing right there having a conversation with him. But instead, the man's eyes were all right there, all on the provision. No, I'm extremely wealthy. You have no idea. I am the owner. Remember? But when he had heard these things, he became very sad, for he was extremely rich. When the provision is worshiped instead of the provider, the provision for life actually becomes a source of death. And you see this actually in Scripture. You may not be familiar. Hang on, clicker. Boop. there we go. You may not be familiar with this event. I'm not going to turn to it and read it simply because of time. But in Numbers chapter 12, you've got the nation of Israel. They had been enslaved in Egypt forever and a year. And God came and he miraculously just sets them free. There's all these incredible plagues. The sea opens up. They walk out on dry ground. And as they walk out on dry ground, the Egyptians are pursuing. As they're pursuing, the waves crash over them. And so like they're free. They're liberated. Like God has done an incredible thing. And he leads them through fire at night and a pillar of cloud during the day. He provides manna for them. He cares for them all the way throughout the journey in the wilderness. And it's interesting. So they're walking. They've been doing this for a long time. And they became impatient because they didn't get to where they wanted to go fast enough on their timetable. They became impatient. They began to grumble. And God said, man, grumble and murmuring not good. And so a plague is sent of these fiery serpents. And they would bite you. And when they would bite you, you would die. It was a death sentence. There was no way of escaping. Bite, no antivenom, boom, death. Bite, death. Bite, death. Bite, death. Bite, death. The people said, this is bad. We're wrong. Moses, will you talk to God? So Moses goes and says, hey, God, we need help, man. Yeah, we've been grumbling around here. Father, help us. Just help us. He says, okay. And so he has them, it's kind of weird, but he has them make a bronze snake and sticks it on a staff and puts it in the middle of the camp. And he says this, he says, hey, if you were anybody who's bitten, if you'll just look right here, then you'll live. That's the cure. And so if you're out walking and boom, you're bit, death sentence, death is coming. And then he's saying, okay, now I just need to turn and look and live. And so I have to be like, it doesn't make any sense because this hurts real bad, but okay. So I'll look and I believe that's the provision you've given me, God, okay. And so as I did that, snake bite did not take my life. It's really a beautiful thing. Look and live, look and live, look and live. Beautiful thing. In John chapter 3, right before John 3:16, this event comes back up. Jesus says, man, just as the serpent was raised up in the wilderness, so the Son of Man will be raised up, and all who will look on him will live. Because we've all been bitten. We all have the death sentence over us, and there is no escape except for Christ. It's a beautiful picture. But you know what happened with that bronze serpent? The provision to give them life and protection. Do you know what happened? They took it and they said, mine. This object is the thing that has given us protection. And they began to worship it. You read in 2 Kings chapter 18, Hezekiah, he takes over. He's a king for the southern kingdom. And if you don't know what that is, that's okay. He's just a king of Judah. And when he took over, Judah was in a really bad state. Everybody was worshiping all sorts of things. And one of the things they were worshiping was this bronze serpent. And they would come and they would give their provisions, begging this idol to give them protection. What do? They grabbed a hold of God's provision and worshiped it as opposed to the provider who gave it. And the result of that was they experienced defeat all over the place. This is a normal thing. When we sit there and say, no, I'm going to worship the provision and not the provider, what's meant to be a source of life becomes a source of death for us. And I was thinking about this as well. You know, the moment we declare ourselves owners over things, things begin to own us. I mean, it's just the reality. As soon as I say, like, this money that God has given me, this money, this is my source of protection. It's what I need for life. It's mine, and I'll dole it out however I want. And I need it. If I lose it, then I might die. And so I say, this is my money. I begin to hoard it. It's really funny, right? I'm no longer really in charge. It is. So I begin to worship it. I'm out. I don't know if I can spend that much money. I don't know. I need more money. I got to have more money. I have to make sure I've got enough. Somebody needs help financially. I can't help you. It's my money. This is my money. It controls my activities. I can't go out because if I go out, I'm going to spend too much of my money. Peter talks about this. For whatever overcomes a person, to that he is enslaved. And when we worship the provision, we're overcome with the provision, and that enslaves us. So the natural lens, when we look at our stuff, we walk away and we say, naturally, it's mine. I'm the owner. I can do with it whatever I want. I earned it. I deserve it. I worked hard for this. And if I want to use this computer, if I want to use this phone to spend all of my time indulging in pornography, it's okay because I pay for the service. Nobody can tell me what I need to do. I'm in my walls. I'm not hurting anybody else because this is my house that I'm paying for. I own it all. We begin to justify all sorts of weird and destructive behavior. But the natural lens is to think it's all yours. The gospel has something different to say. It's very interesting. Just 20 verses later in Luke, chapter 19, verses 1 through 9, we meet this little guy. He's a wee little man. A wee little man was he. Zacchaeus is his name. You might have heard that. Zacchaeus was a wee little man was he. Anyway, so, okay. For the Lord he wanted to see. Yeah, okay, you got it. Yep, you got it. Okay. So he, being Jesus, he entered Jericho and was passing through, and there was a man, a wee little man, called by the name of Zacchaeus. He was the chief, don't miss those words, he was the chief tax collector. And he was, don't miss this, he was rich. Zacchaeus was trying to see who Jesus was and was unable to because of the crowd, for he was short. So he ran on ahead, which is a very undignified thing to do for somebody who's rich and in charge. He ran ahead and he climbed a sycamore tree, which is incredibly undignified, a move of desperation in order to see Jesus, for Jesus was about to pass through that way. When Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, hurry, come on down, man, for today I have got to stay in your house. Come on. He came down the tree quickly, and he received Jesus gladly. When they saw it, they all began to grumble, saying, he is gone to be with a guest of this man who's a sinner. And Zacchaeus, he just stopped and said to the Lord, listen, Lord, half of what I have, half of it right now. I'm selling, I'm liquidating half of it right now, and I'm giving to the poor. And you know what? If I've defrauded, if I've cheated anybody, man, I'm going to go ahead and give them back 4 times the amount that I stole from them. Whoa. And Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house because he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek and save that which was lost, that which was broken. It's very interesting when you put these two stories side by side, because here you have Zacchaeus. He's rich, he has authority, and he has stuff and position. He knows it doesn't complete him. He knows it. That's why he's running ahead. He's got to see this Jesus guy. And then he's offered a closer relationship with Jesus. Hey, I'm here. I need to go to your house. We got to commune together. What's up? Let's do this thing. And his response is radically different. Like he's like just dives out of the tree, comes down like, ta-da, did you see the dismount? Let's go, Jesus. And as they're walking, man, he's like, okay, I accept it. And he starts looking at his stuff. He says, man, the poor, maybe he's heard that the poor are really important. Maybe I heard about that rich young ruler guy. The poor is really important to you. So you know what? Half of what I have, let's go. Let's feed the poor. That's fine. And if I've been cheating anybody, if I've robbed anybody, and I'm the one who's the cause for them to be in that position, then they can come to me. I'm going to give them 4 times as much. Man, this stuff is just here to be used however you want. You see him moving from an owner of stuff to a steward of stuff. And isn't it interesting when you line these two things up, that you have the rich young ruler, who we don't know his name, how similar they are with the offer. They both know the stuff they have doesn't complete. They're both offered a relationship with Christ. One rejects because he says, no, I'm the owner of this stuff. I could never get rid of it. The other says, okay. One returns to the stuff that doesn't work, clings to a comfortable, slow death as opposed to grabbing a hold of life. And the other says, no more. No, there's a new way. I'll follow Jesus. I highlighted it here just in case you couldn't see how they differ. It's pretty amazing that Luke would put that together, isn't it? Within 20 verses, 2 people, very similar situations, 2 radically different responses. Also that we'd have a better understanding really what it is to follow Jesus. Now, the gospel view, man, it moves us from owners of stuff to stewards of stuff. And there's a big difference, because the natural lens says, I own everything. The gospel lens says, man, I've been crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who live, it's Christ who lives in me. Dead people don't own a lot of stuff. Maybe a foundation's named after them, but dead people themselves do not. And so as this new creation, we begin to move ourselves out of this role of owner, and we said, I'm a steward. And if you don't know what a steward is, it's a person who manages another's property. That's what a steward's role is. A steward comes in and would say, okay, if this is your house, the steward comes in and says, I understand none of this is mine. And you have a way, owner, how do you want the tables set? I will make sure the tables are set that way because you own things. You have the right over things. I will use them as you want me to use these things. How should the chairs be stacked? Is it okay for me to sit on them backwards? Is it okay for people? You begin to clarify because you know you're not the owner. You're the steward. And so as the steward, you're always looking towards the eyes of the owner of how to handle the stuff. Remember, our eyes are always looking to the owner when it comes to stuff. And if we're the owner, we're looking to ourselves. If we're stewards, our eyes are looking to Christ. I think about this when I was in the UK. A family said, yes, you can come over to our house and do a grill out for some kids. That's awesome and amazing. And their house was awesome and amazing. And they had one of the most expensive grills I have ever seen in my life. Like, I didn't want to approach it. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, there's some things that are like, yeah, I've got a Weber. And he's like, what's a Weber? You know, like his thing is like, this thing costs more than my first house, Todd. And I'm like, oh my goodness, your first house was like 6 figures. So this whole setup is just incredible. And he's entrusting it to me. And what he does, he shows me this is where things turn on, this is where things go, this is how you turn things off, and when you get done, this is what I need you to do with the grill, this is how I need you to clean the grill, this is how the cover comes back on over things, and he just went through everything that needed to be done. And you know what? I followed those instructions. Why? Because it wasn't my grill. He had entrusted it to me. I was stewarding it. My grill, I'm like, turn it on, 2 things with the brush, that's okay. His, like, you know, and then you have 2 sprays, 16 things, 2 sprays, 16 more this way. You know, it was very detailed, and it wasn't comfortable, and it wasn't easy. My way was easier. But I didn't force my way onto his stuff because I was a steward of his. And I think this is just so awesome. I mean, really, when you stop to think about it, if we are stewards, what that means is every opportunity that we have, every dollar that we spend, every meal that we eat, every moment that we have that's been entrusted to us, if our eyes are to the owner, we have an opportunity to live as designed. We have an opportunity for life to come out of something as simple as buying groceries. We have opportunity for life to come after something as simple as planning a vacation. It's really, really incredible that these mundane things that we think, oh, it's just my money, I spend however I want. When we pause for a moment and have our eyes on the owner and understand that we are a steward, life comes in and life gets really, really exciting for us. So I wanted to look here just a little bit of a mark of an owner. I don't like this slide. I'm just going to let you know. It was a very easy slide to write because I just had to look at my own life. But if you look at your stuff as an owner, usually, oftentimes, your default position is no when somebody asks for help. If somebody has the courage, they come up and say, man, I'm a little short on rent, and I just need some help. Right away, before they even say anything, internally you're like, you're just lazy? No. I don't have the money to spare. I got some new shoes I need to get. I mean, internally, your default is no. Another mark of ownership, man, you make purchases without prayer. I mean, you might, dear Lord, lead me to the right car, the one that you would have me have. And this is, just oh, wow, you're leading me, God. I came right to the car. Like, you may just give it, just a flippant prayer. But do you really sit there and go like, man, I don't know. I mean, I know that I need a new vehicle. But let me just stop and pause and like, God, what is the wise thing? These are your resources. What would you have me do? I know what I would like, but is that what you would like? Mark of an owner, you make vacation plans and trip plans without ever considering him. That just sounds good. You guys are going wherever? That sounds awesome. I'm in. Really? Did you just stop for a moment and think, God, is that how you want to use your resources? Is that how you want to use those days that you've entrusted to me? Man, next one, I don't like this one at all. When people ask to use stuff as your initial thing, like you're just annoyed, you're frustrated or angry. When you view yourself as an owner, that's typically a response. When you choose not to help, do you have this internal dialogue that's just self-focused, self-absorbed justification for not helping others? You know it. Like, man, I really would have liked to have come and moved gravel out in the front of the college auditorium. But, I really had to study for this test that was going to be like in 4 weeks. And if I didn't have that extra 45 minutes of studying over the course of the last few weeks, then I probably just wouldn't have done anything. It was a little hot out there as well. And I have this condition that when it's hot and I work, I sweat. And, I kind of get smelly and I don't want to offend anybody. It's really better that I didn't show up because my BO is really bad. We make these random whatever excuses that are all about, it's just not comfortable. I just didn't want to. I don't like it. No desire to. Oh, my table's getting together and they're going to go to Subway to meet? Like, who eats at Subway? I don't want to go to Subway, so no. Why? Well, I'm allergic to their 7-grain bread, and somebody will probably have it, and I'll break out in hives because that happened to me never, but I'll just say that so that I don't have to go because it's about my time, about my resources. What's your primary view of your dwelling place? Is it just, it's my retreat space? Whether you own a home, have an apartment. Like, do you just view it as just there for you? Like, I come home and you'll justify it this way. I have to have the space that's all about me because I give so much everywhere else. And so when I come home, this is my space. Because if I'm not fully rejuvenated, there's no way that I can possibly give to those around me. Now listen, there's some truth. There really is some truth to that. I'm not knocking that because God does want us to have good self-care. And no is an answer that he gives us more times than probably what you think. But do I view where I live, is it all about me or is it something different? I told you I don't like these things. Are you offended at all by what I'm saying? All of those are indicators that you probably view stuff from a position of owner and not steward. See, Mark of a steward would say, man, my default position is actually maybe. When you ask for help, my default position is not no and is not yes. It's maybe. Why is it maybe? Because if it's yes, that's still all about me, right? It's about me. I have to meet everybody's needs. It's me who has to meet everybody's needs. It's me, but you're a steward. And a steward looks to the owner before they ever commit to anything. Hey, I need some help. I'm a little short on rent. Could you? Maybe. What do you mean maybe? How come you can't give me an answer right now? Listen, it's not mine. I need to go spend some time praying. I just really, give me a little bit more information. Let's dialogue about this. What's happening? What's going on? Like, give me a better, I don't want to give you all the information. Just give me money. Whoa. Okay. Maybe I've got all the information I need, but I'm still going to go and pray. Mark of a steward, he makes purchases only after prayer and reflection. And I'm not talking just cars and houses. I'm talking like when you're driving to eat. This happened the other day. I was sitting there at the Sonic app. I love the Sonic app because you can sit there and be like, here's what I want, and here's when I want it. And they're very timely. And I just found myself like, it's just so convenient, and I like that. I'm amazed. I pull up, and I check into the stall, and my picture shows up. I'm like, oh, the car hops on the way. This is awesome. I never have to really talk to anybody in this whole process, and I can just get my food and go back to my little office that's all about me and my comfort, so I never have to talk to anybody. But I was sitting there, and as I was going, I'm hungry. I need food. True statement, true statement. I must go to Sonic, and I mean, there's a deal right now, so it's only going to cost me $6.16 to get all this food. So obviously I should, and as I'm sitting there getting ready to go through things, and just this conviction came in, like, really, is that what you need? Is that the best way of using my resources? And I was like, And I paused. And I was like, God, what would you have? Where would you have me go? Or maybe you'd have me not eat at all. Maybe you're calling me during this lunch break, even though I'm hungry and I do need food, but I don't need food at every single meal. Maybe you're calling me to fast for this meal and to be in prayer for the people of Junction. Maybe that's what you're calling me into. See, a steward is willing to go ahead and have those dialogues. It doesn't mean that you sit in your car and go, I don't know until I get a handwriting on the wall that says, go to Sonic, then I'll go. But do we even just in the smaller things like, God, is this how you want to use your resources? Is this, I can go to H-E-B and get a salad for a little bit less money. It's not as fun as the tots, but that's okay. How about when vacation plans trips only after prayer and reflection? Family's going. I'm in. We always go. This is what we do. It's our tradition. We go every year and do this. This is what we do. Or do we stop and say, man, I know I would love to, but let me just stop. Because we're talking, this is going to cost $1,500 or it's going to cost however much money to go do that. And man, yes, the resources are there, but let me just, God, is this how you would want these resources to be utilized? And again, I think a lot of times for me, I don't engage in that because I'm fearful that he's going to say no. My little magic lamp of that's how I view God sometimes. Like, okay, should I go on this vacation? Click, I think he's just something happened in my hand. I don't know what it was. But taking just some time, slowing down, reflecting, praying, looking to the owner. Am I open-minded when others ask to use my stuff? And do I wrestle over helping people before saying no? Like, is it really a wrestle? Like, why am I saying no? I'm saying no because I'm exhausted. And I really do need my space to be a place of just harbor and retreat right now. I'm in a season of life where just everything is just crumbling around me, and I really do need that. But I don't need it to be just a place of isolation. I do need to invite one or two of my close friends to come alongside and just sit with me. But do you even wrestle? Or do you say, nope, can't do it? See, a lot of us, we just don't pause. We don't pause very long to see what does the owner want us to do with his resources. Primary view as steward is, again, is that your dwelling is an open resource. Use however you want. Man, and if you're challenged by what I'm saying, there's probably also in you a degree of stewardship that does view your stuff that way. So there's hope in the middle of that. Man, eyes are always on the owner. So what that would look like, again, is when we think the natural lens is, yeah, the money is that. Who's in control? Who's the owner? That would be me. And so my eyes are always on me, myself, and I. I want me, my needs, my timing. Delayed gratification, whatever. I've got credit now. Woo! Natural lens. The gospel lens bypasses the provision and looks to the provider and says, wow, God, thank you. I don't know why you've entrusted this to me. It's interesting. Now, God's stewards, you need to know this, they're not always broke. So that's one of the, I think, lies that the enemy likes to use. Like, if you really let God have access to your resources, he's going to take every last penny, and you are going to have nothing. And so he doesn't really care about you. He doesn't want you to be provided for. He's a selfish God. I mean, that's the fear that comes up, at least within me sometimes. But I find it interesting, if we go where we started, back in Acts chapter 2, verses 44 through 45, and all those who believed were together and had all things in common, and they began selling their property and possessions and were sharing with others. It's interesting when you look at the word selling, it's in the imperfect tense, which means it's an ongoing process. It's not like they sold everything. It's not like, okay, here it is, we're all together. You're coming to the church. I need your house. I need your car. I need all your clothes. I need all your food. I need everything from you. Sell it right now. Come on. That's not what's going on. There is this idea, that this reality of like, okay, everything that I have is not mine. It's no longer about building my estate. It's about building his kingdom. This is now his stuff. And when needs arise, oh man, Tim needs something. I need to move into it. And God just prompts like, man, I have this property, or I have this chair that I could sell. If I sell this chair, it's going to provide X amount of money that would actually help Tim's need. And God just like, yes, that's what I have. That's what was going on. It wasn't a liquidation sale for every single person who came in. It wasn't give me everything that you have and I'm taking it all and you have nothing. There was this moment by moment dependence, moment by moment leading of Christ. Now, we're going to come into some questions here, and I'm going to let you know this is my absolute least favorite. My absolute least favorite part of tonight. Because it hurts me. It challenges me. And I don't know about you, I like being challenged, but I also like being comfortable. You know, that's just That's just me. So I like to come in and say, that's an interesting fact, but just please don't nudge me, Todd. And so if that's you, then maybe just close your eyes, take a nap, and plug your ears. Now, a question to ponder. If you were to view yourself as a good steward of the money he has entrusted to you, because that's exactly what it is, no matter where you are financially, whatever you have, whether it's a lot, whether it's a little, it's money that he has entrusted to you. And if you're going to tell me, like, no, I earned that, I'm going to come back to you and say, did you decide to be born here and now? Did you decide to be born with the intelligence that you have? Did you decide to be born with the work ethic that you have? Did you decide to be born in the country you were born in? Did you decide to have all the resources and advantages that you have right now living at this time in history? Did you decide any of that? Well, no. He's wired you together in a beautiful way. So all that we have, yes, we take advantage of how he has made us, but we owe everything to him. And so if he gives us $100 to steward or $100 million to steward, it's his choice. But they're his resources that he has entrusted to us. And it's fascinating when you go and you continue to read parables of the stewards, the servants. When their leader leaves, he leaves them all different values. And it's interesting whether they had 10 or whether they had 5, the reward is exactly the same. No need to be jealous if you've only been entrusted with 1 or if you've been entrusted with 10. There's no need to be jealous about that because he's looking for faithfulness, because he's looking for well done, good and faithful servant. That's what he's looking for. So if you view yourself as a good steward of the money that, again, he has entrusted to you, what is one practical change that you'd experience? Like if you viewed the money in your account right now as his resources and you're only a good steward, what is one practical change that would happen? You'd probably need to stop and think on it, pray on it a little bit. Or something might come to your mind. You might like, well, man, I'd cancel that streaming service because we never watched that streaming service. And I would take and redirect that money to a missionary that we know in a far-off world who is really struggling to get their support raised. Because I'm not watching it anyway. Obviously, I don't need the money because it goes out every month and I don't watch a thing. Why not redirect it over here? And even though it's a small, insignificant amount, it's not to that individual who's receiving it. And then we're like, well, how does that potential change make you feel? Well, it actually makes me uncomfortable because I might want to someday watch something on that service. Or if I canceled it and saved it, if I saved it for 12 months, then I'd have enough money to go to Sonic every day for a week. You know? App happy, you know? And add in there the cheesy sticks, because those are great. How does that potential change make you feel? Well, kind of in stress because I might lose out on something. That's just me. I don't know about you. Next question. If you viewed yourself as a good steward of the dwelling place that he has entrusted to you, what is one practical change that you'd experience? Man, I've got an extra bedroom. I really like the quiet. I just need my restful place. Oh, what if all of a sudden I open it up to somebody who is in need? Somebody who had a temporary need. They're willing to pay. It'd be inconvenient and I have to move some of my stuff in the fridge. And man, if I did that, they might drink my milk. They might snore. My utilities might go up. Might have some issues in communication and have some additional frustration there. You know, that's just a little too uncomfortable, God. How would you feel? What would be one practical change? If you were a good steward looking to the owner, how do you want to use this place where I'm living? Would you host a table event? Would you invite one person over from Junction just to get to know them? Nah, I don't know. How does that make you feel? Freaked out. I'm not very good at hosting people. I wouldn't know what to do. I'd just throw a whole bunch of Cheez-Its out there and say, go for it. And you know what? Most people coming in would say, awesome Cheez-Its. You know? Have you ever tried to stack as many as you can? Like, let's have a little game out of this. And you're like, whoa, I thought I was a horrible host, and now I got the best game ever, and you can eat the game pieces. If you viewed yourself as a good steward of the transportation he has entrusted to you, what's one practical change that you'd experience? So my car's not my car. I love Aaron, and I love that while I have this natural, my natural position is to be like, no, it's mine, I'm going to be stingy. That's just my natural thing. God has stretched me massively in that area. He's continued to grow me, and it's amazing. Many people, when I talk, are like, yes, I'm very stingy. Like, no, you're not. You're really generous. Even Aaron at times, no, you're not. I'm like, no, I really am. It's the work of God that has done this. But I love the fact that like Aaron will all the time say like, hey, what do you think? I love the fact that she asked and just say, this is what we're doing. She says, hey, what do you think? So-and-so, they need a van. They need a van to go for a week. And they're going to drive it like thousands of miles. Are you okay with that? Like, well, what are we supposed to drive in the meantime? Well, they've got a moped. We've got a family of 4. How are we supposed to get a family of 4 around? God's going to provide. It's okay. And I love my natural thing is no. And then I like, oh. Okay, God, what would you have us do? And it's amazing. The trips that our minivan has taken without us. And it's come back in usually worse shape than what it's loaned out in. And I'm not bitter at all by it. I love the fact that God stretches me in that area. But when I think about it, one potential change to like have it be rented out even more, or not rented, or given away even more, I get nervous. I get nervous. What if I get stranded? And that's the reason why. What if it's an inconvenience for me? And that's pride, and that's the flesh. That's my objection to letting him have access to everything, is it might inconvenience me. Well, let's continue. If you view yourself as a good steward of the phone he has entrusted to you, what's one practical thing that you'd experience? What's one practical thing that might change? Maybe you'd look at it less. Maybe you'd use it and actually call somebody who you know is hurting, as opposed to saying, I'm just tired and I just want to scroll through social media. I mean, I don't know what that one practical change would be. I have no idea. Maybe what you would actually use it for when you're posting on social media would radically change. Maybe the tone of the message that you would send wouldn't be passive-aggressive, but would be supportive. Maybe you would use it to enter the world of others who are hurting. I don't know. That's between you and God, but what's one practical change that would happen if your phone, that's not your phone, it's his phone that he's entrusted to you? What would happen? Well, golly, then I couldn't sit there and gossip as much, and I really like the gossip. God's going to just kill my joy. God's a killjoy. What is that revealing about my heart? Do I think that he's a good father who wants the greatest thing for me, or do I think he's a killjoy who wants to just leave me homeless and depleted of all resources, and I'm just going to suffer throughout the rest of my life? That's a bigger issue, all revealed through stuff. Well, let's continue. If you viewed yourself as a good steward of the food that he's entrusted to you, what's one practical change that you'd experience? I mean, I don't know. Maybe you'd make twice as much and have people over. I have no idea. Maybe you eat out half as much so that you'd have some extra cash so you could engage and help others. I have no idea. But when you begin to think about what's one practical change that the owner of your food, how he would want that used as you look to him, it's probably fear might show up. What if he has me do this? What if he has me eat healthy? I like my Cheez-Its. I don't know. If you viewed yourself as a good steward of the time that he has entrusted to you, what's one practical thing that would change in your life? You're like, Todd, you just leapt from tangible physical things to some other resource, but time is a resource, and I did. But the time that we have has been entrusted to us. It's his. He's the one who gave it. He knows the number of days. We don't. And if I'm a steward of that time, what would change? What's one thing? Don't think about what's everything. What's just one thing? Man, I don't know. I might wake up 5 minutes earlier and take a walk, a 5-minute walk, and just walk out and just talk to God, pour my heart out before him. I don't know. It's interesting, though. If you want to see a mark of somebody who's an owner versus a steward, I think this is your number one telltale thing. An owner is usually very discontent, worried, exhausted, ungrateful and unthankful, unappreciative of what they have. A steward, they know they have nothing. And so if they have an iPhone 4, they're like, I've got an iPhone 4. If they're eating ramen noodles all the time, even though they could afford more because God has, for whatever reason, wanted them to steward the resources slightly differently. They're like, I have ramen noodles. People don't have anything. That's so great. You see them and they're always wearing the same shirt because God hasn't really given them the freedom to go ahead and buy an all-new wardrobe all the time. And you just see them in the same thing and they're just thankful. They're like, oh man, it's just such a great day. And like, how can you be thankful you're wearing the same outfit every day, Todd? It's always a Junction shirt. I'm like, I know, but they're anti-stink and it's okay. I don't know what it is, but that's one of the greatest marks. If a steward is going to be thankful and an owner is going to be miserable and never content. Quick review. I went on too long. My bad. Stuff, it's all of our possession. The natural lens, we view ourselves as the owner. It's all mine. The gospel lens is the steward. As the band is coming up, I just want to give us a challenge here. I want to reflect, identify, and share. Here it is. This week, with the time that he has entrusted to you, I encourage you, find a moment. Ask God, where would the moment be for me to engage with you? And go back and just read the text again. In Luke chapter 18. Read that, 18 through 23, and then read Luke chapter 19, 1 through 10, and just begin to reflect on that a little bit. And then begin to just pause and be like, God, what lens do I look at stuff through? What is my natural disposition? And we're not going to be perfect. It's not going to be all one or all the other. More than, well, it could be all one. But even if we view ourselves as stewards, more than likely there's going to be moments and areas where we just have a hard time letting go of. But just spend some intentional time reflecting. And not just walking out of here going, well, I thought about it on my way from here to the car, and then I realized I was tired and hungry, and I got home, and I forgot about everything else. Just spend some time. Respond to his invitation to spend time with me. Come follow me. And then identify what's one thing that would change in your life if you were a steward. Just as you sit there, God, man, all this stuff is yours. I've never looked at stuff this way before, but I want to start looking at this through the lens of a steward. Lord, what's one thing here that you would like done differently with your resources? Spend some time. Just what's one thing, God, with all the resources you've entrusted to me, what's one thing that you'd want done differently? Just what is it, Lord? You lead me in that. And then when you sit there and go like, I don't want to, what is it that prevents you? What is it? And then wrestle with that issue. And then realize that every time that you honor and follow through and obey him by saying, yes, I want you to miss one meal a week and I want you to spend that time praying for your table. That's the one thing I want you to do. I don't want you to reallocate that money anyplace else. I just want you to skip one meal a week, and I want you to pray for your table. I don't know if that's what he's going to lead you to do, but if that's what it is, you're like, well, man, you're not really asking me to give away anything other than just miss a meal and pray for people. But I'd be hungry. I might be cranky. I might be whatever else. Like, what's preventing you from stepping into that? Selfishness, probably. And then I just encourage you, share with somebody who will pray with you and encourage you. Actually, on the table sheets, I've switched it around. Because that's such a passive thing a lot of times. Like the challenge really is you ask somebody else, what's the one thing? How can I be praying for you? What's the one area of conviction? How can I pray for you? And then after they've shared with you, then you say, man, thank you so much. I would love to entrust you with this is how he's convicted me. This is not supposed to be a Lone Ranger thing. That's why we're all about having you walk through life in community so you can challenge and encourage one another. Because God uses community in great ways.